This is Jeff Miller of A Dash of Insight, talking with Bob Deely, creator of Mr. Model. And we have been going through a historical analysis of the various recessions and how Mr. Model did at forecasting in each of these cases. Bob, I think we're ready to talk about the recession of 1991, it looks like, or 1990.
It started in July of 1990.
Okay.
Yes, Jeff. The what we see coming out of the recession of 1981-82 was Mr. Model go through a period in which we set what at the time were record high readings. And interestingly enough, after the recession of 1981-82, we had very much the same conversation we had this time, that it wouldn't last, that it was built on sand, so forth and so on, and any number of people telling us that the next period would be uh, the next move down was an indication that we were going to go straight through 200 and we would have an aborted recovery. Well, as it turned out, we had the third longest expansion of any of the periods that are on the chart from 1982 into the summer of 1990. And what we begin to see then is that going into 89 and into 1990, we see the model start to flash a warning. And part of that was because the Fed was in the process of tightening monetary policy. We flattened out the yield curve, and we also began to develop some pressure on both the inflation and employment sides of the model that suggested that a cycle event might happen. The model was giving an indication that this might happen starting early in 1990 and actually late in 1989. The actual cycle peak was placed in July of 1990, and it takes account of some of the events that were associated with the first Desert War. We have also forgotten that this was during the period in which Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, and we responded with Operation Desert Shield and then subsequently with Desert Storm. We had a recovery that took place and saw the model go up again, showing a prolonged expansion. And this lasted until we got into 2000 and 2001. Starting in 2000, again, the Federal Reserve began to tighten, flatten the yield curve. We also reached the all-time low in unemployment, and we had the inflation rate and the unemployment rate intersect, which began to get us into the signal that was associated with the 2001 recession. Interestingly enough, that signal was given by the model in June of 2000, showing a recession that would start in March of 2001. And I bring that up because the model signaled recessions in an election year. And the interesting part was that we would have had a recession in 2001 regardless of who won the election. What would have made a difference, however, is how we responded to it. But the long and the short of it is that the model told us in 2000 to expect a recession in 2001, one that would be relatively short and shallow, which is what it was. The signals coming both in the 1990 recession and the 2001 said that we would have relatively short and shallow episodes, which we did. What then that leads us up to is a conversation of what happened this last time and how the model performed both in front of and during the 2007-2009 recession. But that's a topic for another time.
So what you're telling us here is that the Fed policy was important in the period before 2000, and that was the key element.
Yes, indeed. And as we said in a prior conversation, the Fed's palm prints are on the back of the 2001 recession. They did nothing to prevent the downturn once the economy showed signs of wanting to roll over.
And I also want to note another comment you made, which was that unemployment was very low.
Correct.
And I think this is counterintuitive for some people, but cycle peaks happen when unemployment
Is
is
low.
low. And that's one of the messages from Mr. Model.
Correct.
Thank you, Bob.